The front end stays planted, and the steering is just fantastic. Hey crew, I've got the key to that 24 Acura Integra Type S. We are going to take it for a drive, but first, let's check out how it looks on the inside and outside. This is the first Type S version of the Integra since it was called the RSX Type S back in 2002. And it separates itself from the standard Integra by things like the Type S badge in the black gloss exploding diamond grille. There's a heat extractor up on the hood, functional inlets at the corners, beneath projector LED headlights with LED DRLs and turn signals. There are flared out wheel arches front and rear. This one is painted in platinum white. It's got a rich metallic flake on the paint surface. I do like this color on this car, but not quite as much with the dark gray painted 19-inch wheels, but instead with the bronze wheel options. They're wrapped in Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires, size 265 section front and rear. Within those wheels are red painted 4-piston Brembo brakes up front, and the front fender has a Type S badge. The profile looks great with a raised hood portion, a deep gouge between the wheels, and a gentle taper to the roofline. At the back is a carbon fiber lip spoiler above a Type S badge, LED taillights and turn signals, and a very pumped up black gloss diffuser with 3 center exit exhaust ports, just like the Honda Civic Type R. I'm really in approval of how Acura managed a cross section of aggression and delicacy. And of course, because it's based on the Honda Civic Type R, my question for you is which looks better, CTR or ITS? Let me know in the comments, and let's check out the interior. Opening up and looking inside at this red and black interior with leather seating surfaces in the rear, hard plastics up behind the doors, leatherette padding here and here, and ELS Studio 16 speaker sound system is standard. Stepping in, oh, I don't have to duck my head all that much, that's nice. Behind my own seat at 6 feet tall, I've got good knee room, no map pocket, big foot pockets to slide my feet under, which helps thigh support. Headroom, ooh, that's not good. Head is pressed against the roof. I can't make it back to that headrest, so I'm just kind of uncomfortable. It's gonna be a thumbs down from me, and that's not the only thumbs down because we don't have air vents back here. $52,000 vehicle, no air vents, and no USB ports. Instead of a middle seat, you also have cup holders. So there's no armrest to come down with any additional ones. The back seats aren't looking so good. I mean, yeah, if you're on the smaller side, but everyone's gonna be missing the convenience features. Let's check out the front. Door close noise. Little bit of a rattle to it, not bad though. Smart keyless entry is for the front 2 doors. The front seats are both heated with black suede inserts. The driver's seat is power adjusting. The passenger seat is manual adjusting. There are Type S tread plates and floor mats with aluminum accents for the 3 pedals because the Type S is a manual only affair. The front doors are injection molded up high, harder plastic still down low. The 2 windows up front are one touch. They are power adjusting, not power folding door mirrors. No button to release the lift back, so come on back. Press up on the button and enjoy the nice large opening to 24 cubic feet of space. It's easy to load in cargo with this design. The only disclaimer is that the floor is kind of low. So if you've got something heavy in here like, I don't know, a sandbag, then your lower back is at risk when pulling it out. There is an inflation kit beneath the floor, no spare tire. And if you need more room, then if you've got long arms, you can reach forward and press on the tabs to fold the seats down 60-40. Otherwise, go to the rear doors for that. There are 2 integrated handles to close up the lift back. Sliding into the driver's seat. Drivers are greeted to a leather-wrapped perforated steering wheel with Type S logo on the bottom. It feels great in the hands. There is a digital and slightly reconfigurable gauge cluster here. No head-up display. Injection molding up on the dashboard. 9-inch touchscreen infotainment system is easy to use, responsive, and has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There are some physical redundancies on the left side of the screen, including a volume knob and seat controls, dual zone auto climate, 2 USB ports, 1A, 1C, and a DC outlet, plus a wireless charging pad. Your drive mode selector is here. You've got your shift lever, 2 cup holders, leather topping for the console, which is not that large, but it is very deep. Visibility, is pretty good. Those little windows back there do help, and there's standard blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic. With its leather seating, this cabin is a small step up over the Civic Type R, but Acura missed an opportunity to add rear air vents and USB ports. Now let's take the Integra Type S for a drive. All right, let's fire it up. And we're live on the two screens in the 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder. Look at that from the ELS studio. That's fun. Hello, cabin crew. Thank you for joining me for this drive in the Integra Type S. Our drive mode selected here. We've got a few options. We've got Comfort. We've got Sports. We've got Sport Plus, and then if you hit the button, it brings up Individual, which you can press and hold to customize, changing up your engine response, your steering heft, your suspension stiffness, and the gauge settings. We'll start off in Comfort. Sounds good to me. And before we go into reverse, let's just take a peek at the gear selector, the shift lever right now, because in the Civic Type R, which this vehicle shares its engine and platform with, you get a fully aluminum shifter knob. And that is a problem because if it's very hot and you come in, sit in the car and put your hand on the shifter, it burns. Or if it's very cold, then you do the same thing and your hand freezes. But by adding this little strip of perforated leather and stitching it so nicely, that means that you can just grip it like this if you need to until the temperature regulates inside the cabin. Whereas in the Civic Type R, you have to have one of those aftermarket socks or something to put on it, or your hand is just going to be scarred, frozen. So I love this. Great initial just impression on the car. Moving this over and down to reverse brings up a medium resolution camera system. We've got a few different backup views. No overhead projection, no front-facing camera, but you do get trajectory lines. Always good. Into drive, and we'll kick things off as we do with a turning radius test. Wheel cranked, and yeah, it's kind of wide. When you've got the front tires driving the vehicle and turning it, it can be a wide turning circle. Turn signal sound. It's a classic knock. I don't mind it. What about the world famous horn test? Ooh, that is quite a bit deeper and more stately than in the Civic Type R. I like it. Powertrain in the TEG Type S is just like the CTR, a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder, but unlike the CTR, we've got 320 horsepower at our disposal on 91 or 93 octane fuel, whereas the CTR has just 315. So that extra 5 horsepower, yeah, that really sells you. Same pound-feet of torque, 310, and the same 6-speed manual-only gearbox, whereas in the regular Integra, you can have an automatic gearbox, and power is sent to just the front tires. The way that power is delivered here in Comfort is very smooth. Peak torque comes in at 2,600 RPM and hangs out for a while. So as long as you're getting up there in the rev range, you are motivating yourself with plenty of haste. Ride quality in the Integra Type S is not an oxymoron like it kind of is in the CTR, where quality, I wouldn't exactly give it that in the CTR. You are bouncing around a lot with the dual axis strut front suspension and multi-link rear. We have the same setup here in the Integra Type S with the same adaptive dampers, but the way that they've tuned this setup for ride comfort means that you actually can tolerate it. More than tolerate it, you just enjoy daily driving the Integra Type S. It takes the road blemishes in stride. It has composure over imperfections in the road surface, so that you commute in this without the intense rebound of the Civic Type R that is just so busy that it becomes tedious. Now, One thing the CTR has in terms of daily enjoyability over even the Integra Type S is the seat comfort. The CTR seats are like legendary with their bolstering and their plush fits fabric, but it's so nice. These are great. They're great seats. I want to make that clear. They're just not quite as much of an occasion when you soak into them. The padding is there, the support is there, there's just a sufficient amount of bolstering. They're just not the same iconic chairs as in the CTR. This vehicle has 29 additional pounds of sound deadening compared to the CTR. But one, it doesn't really affect the overall curb weight of the vehicle, but it does improve the cabin insulation, the cabin isolation. And so it's a quieter driving experience than in the Civic Type R. Not by a large measure, but a small one. And that small measure is appreciable when you're thinking about this as a commuter. And when you're on the highway at these speeds, listening for the NVH level, wind noise isn't terrible. Tire noise is noticeable though. That is finding its way into the cabin. Again, not quite as prevalent as the CTR, but still, I want to say more than its direct competitors from BMW and Mercedes-Benz. This feels and sounds more like an entry-level luxury product in this regard, in this capacity. But it tracks nice and straight on the road. It doesn't require a lot of steering input. You've got adaptive cruise control with steering assistance, which does keep you nicely in the center of the lane. It's not a hands-free system. This is just for demonstration purposes. But this is a great aid to you. Even with a manual transmission, having these features to aid you in your commute. The brake pedal is so very easy to modulate. That's unchanged compared to the Civic Type R. And I want to get into this gearbox because it's such a tight transmission. The throws are super short and crisp. The gates are very well defined. And so you just enjoy working the gearbox. When you notch into each new gear, it's so very satisfying and not at all a labor. The only thing that I have as a small criticism of the transmission is the clutch. The engagement and release point aren't ultra well defined, and so if you are new to manual transmissions or you haven't driven one in a while and therefore you lack the sensitivity to foot release or positioning on the clutch and when you're pouring in the throttle, it may take you a little while to get used to it. And a final commuter environment pleasantry of driving the Integra Type S is that even in comfort mode, without worrying about the active valve exhaust system, just kind of moseying, you can still hear some of those satisfying turbocharger noises. So just digging into it and then releasing, you hear the hiss of the blow-off valve. The whoosh. I'm a sucker for those things, but those aren't the things that get you excited to drive the Integra Type S, because when you go into the Sport Plus drive mode and you downshift and you put your foot down, everything changes for the good. This is a spicy car. And while it may not have the Plus R drive mode of the CTR with the horizontal tachometer and the accessory gauges on the display and the ability to turn off stability control, it still packs quite the punch. And paired with this amazingly great transmission, is satisfying even before you see your first corner. And I don't know if you heard it yet, but that active valve exhaust, now with it opened up, and because it's tuned differently than the CTR, which has a front resonator that they don't have in this, it allows for some really characterful noises. I'm talking about things like pops and burbles. Oh, yes. Now let's get some numbers on the board. I want to do a real-world 0 to 60 test in the ITS. For that, I've got my race box set up here, and there is no launch control system, so I'm just from Sport Plus drive mode going to turn traction control off, then rev it out, and see how we do. Tire spin, quick in a second, and we get here to 60 without shifting, 5.75 seconds. We got there. Now, I make no claim that that was the best launch ever, but I feel that it is fair from a real-world perspective. If you plan on just pulling up to a stoplight and then jamming it out to 60, you should get there in about 5.7 seconds. If it were car and driver with access to a track, then they've seen as quick as 5.1 seconds. Still, that tells you all you need to know about how much the extra 5 horsepower compared to the Civic Type R buys you, because that vehicle, with car and driver's testing, got to 60 in 4.8 or 4.9 seconds. Either way you slice it, this or the CTR, it's not going to be the quickest thing to 60, but thankfully that's not where the fun runs out. That's where it gets started. Because when it's time to change direction quickly, the ITS begins to separate itself from its purely luxury-focused competitors. The brakes bite, the PS4's tires grip, the front end stays planted, and the steering is just fantastic. The steering is quick and precise and weighted appropriately to deliver the communication that drivers need to know when and how they can push the car and how it will respond. The bit of torque steer I do feel is easy enough to control. It's not ripping the wheel out of my hands at full throttle. For a front drive car, it doesn't plow the nose all that much. I think that's owed to the front end grip, and compared to the Civic Type R, the softer rear end, allowing it to rotate more, so that when it does want to plow a little bit, you just give it some trail braking to bring the rear end around. Now, because the suspension is tuned for a bit more compliance than the Civic Type R, it doesn't feel quite as tight, quite as eager to make rapid changes in direction. But those are things that only really come out on a racetrack. Here on a good canyon road, this car feels just as rewarding, just as enjoyable. You've got all the other goodies too. You've got the front limited slip differential that's going to keep the inner wheel from hopping on tighter corners or with faster pace. Got the excellent pedal placement for rev matching those heel-toe downshifts on your own. Or you can utilize the auto rev match feature, which will automatically blip the throttle for you every single time. Perfectly. I prefer to do it myself, but in traffic it is nice to have that. I just wish that in this car that was easier to turn on and off. You have to be fully stopped with the e-brake engaged and then go find it in the infotainment system. Way too many steps. But if that is what I want to complain about in this car, then dynamically they've done so many things right. So many things that competitors just can't match. This and the CTR are just at the pinnacle of front drive dynamics, and even if we're talking about competitors that have all-wheel drive but are front drive biased, they just can't hang. And that is going to lead me into my MilesPerHr word of the day, which for the 24 Acura Integra Type S is harmonic, having congruent or integrated parts, things that balance each other. I'm thinking about the way that this vehicle daily drives, the ride compliance that makes it so enjoyable as a commuter vehicle. And then when you get it to the right road, the sharpness, the precision, and the engagement of the drive as a foil, as the other side of the spectrum, and how both work together so perfectly to make it a really polished final product. But that's not the whole story on the Integra Type S. We need to frame it with competitors, and we will in just a sec. First, let's talk top speed and fuel economy. The top speed of the Integra Type S is 167 miles per hour, and the fuel economy is 21 mpg in the city, 28 on the highway, and 24 combined. The starting price for the Integra Type S, this is kind of a fully loaded from the get-go situation, is $52,000 or just under that. And this one, as tested with the platinum white paint job, is $600 more than that. There's no shortage of competition in this subcompact performance luxury space. We've got the Audi S3 that starts at about $48,000. It makes 306 horsepower, gets to 60 in 4.3 seconds, and its fuel economy of 26 combined. We've got the BMW M235i Grand Coupe xDrive that starts at $48,600. It makes 301 horsepower, gets to 60 in 4.2 seconds, and also gets 26 combined mpg. The Mercedes-AMG CLA 35 starts around $51,000. It makes 302 horsepower, gets to 60 in 4.4 seconds, and has fuel economy of 25 combined. And we've talked about it a lot. We have to include it, the Honda Civic Type R. That one starts just under $44,000. It makes 315 horsepower from the same motor. It also has the same 6-speed manual transmission. Gets to 60 in 4.9 seconds though, and it's the same 24 combined mpg. Now, I feel it necessary to break the verdict up into two parts. This versus the luxury players, and then this versus the CTR. So starting in the luxury space, the Acura Integra Type S makes the most power. It's not the quickest to 60. It is the only one with a 6-speed manual gearbox. It is the best to look at in my mind, despite it not having a more prestigious badge. And it has the most compliant ride quality. The cabin is not the most insulated. The fuel economy is definitely not the best. And the rear seat accommodations are the worst by far. You're really doing without features back there compared to BMW or the Mercedes or even the Audi. And so those things hold it back a little bit, along with it having the most expensive price tag. But I still think from a driving standpoint, this is really worth your money. It's worth it from a daily driving enjoyability standpoint, and more so when you really have the opportunity to open it up a little bit. Compared to the Civic Type R, the price point of the ITS might be a little more of an issue because it's $8,000 more expensive, and yes, you get the leather trim seats and the little leather piece around the gear selector, but they're largely the same vehicle. They drive pretty much the same way. This one looks a little better on the outside to me, and the ride compliance is definitely better. And so that's the real question. If the daily driving comforts of the ITS is worth that premium for you, it might be worth it for me, but it'd be very close. I think if both were offered to me at MSRP, I'd have to really find the justification for the extra $8,000. Which would you guys choose? Would you have this? Would you have the BMW M235i xDrive Grand Coupe? Would you have the Mercedes-AMG CLA 35? Would you get the Audi S3? Or would you go have a Honda Civic Type R? Let me know in the comments. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, and share it. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell to get notified. And I'll see you again next time. Yeehaw!